Which side did this come from?
Yes.
It is docile.
Okay.
Just docile.
Like a golden retriever.
That's right there.
Okay, so this is the prosecution offering.
Yes.
No,
We
you
didn't
guys defense this time, yes. So you guys want to show that the defendant is docile? That doesn't sound right.
No.
No, they're.
They do.
So it's a
check
defense
is-
offering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah,
came
yeah,
from you.
that one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the form as a whole.
We're about to start round 2, Jack. Can I call you back?
Hi, Doc.
Hey,
Okay.
Doc. Did they land?
I'm assuming.
Did they go? Yeah, I actually didn't know what time they're playing.
Because.
Okay. Let's kick it off. Prosecution, you got a witness.
Prosecution calls Detective Chesney to the stand. Excellent. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
My name is Detective Jane Chesney with the Midland Center Police Department, Major Crimes Division.
How long have you been a detective?
Well, I actually started as a basic patrol officer back in 2008. That's just answering your everyday 911 calls. But in 2016, I was offered a position with the Major Crimes Division. Now, that handles high-profile cases, kidnappings, murders, assaults, and we handle those cases.
What type of training did you receive as a part of the MCPD Major Crimes Division?
On top of the 720-hour basic training we do as patrol officers, I took a 40-hour intensive program that handled investigative properties and techniques, and also handling witnesses and how to get their statements.
And how'd you get involved in today's case?
Well, I became the lead investigator after receiving a call from a Corbin Dallas regarding a potential kidnapping of a 12-year-old Miss Parker Page.
What does your role as lead investigator entail?
Well, as lead investigator, my job is pretty easy. It means that I just have to make sure to follow the set departmental procedures when going through an investigation. And we do this in 3 steps. First, we will follow up with the complainant and see if they have any leads anywhere. In this case, it was Mr. Corbin Dallas. And assuming that his information would be able to pinpoint a location of any missing person, we will go to that location to search for evidence and witnesses. And assuming that there's a suspect, we will then conduct an interrogation.
I want to break that down. Did you talk to the complainant, Corbin Dallas?
I did. I went to Mr. Dallas's residence, and he was actually able to pinpoint Miss Parker Page's location using a cell phone app. And her cell phone was located to the Calkins campground in Breckenridge County.
Did you find Parker at the Calkins campground?
No. When we arrived at the scene, we were led to campsite number 12, where Miss Page and her biological mother were registered to stay. And that was where we found Miss Ryder asleep in her tent, but Miss Page was not there.
Did you speak to the defendant?
We did. I had asked if they knew the whereabouts of Parker, to which they responded they were missing. And then she started stuttering, saying and ah, and she asked me if I would be contacting her parole officer.
And why did you place the defendant under arrest?
Well, we actually arrested the defendant under the belief that they were in violation of their parole. Upon arriving at the campsite, I ran a background check in the cop car on Miss Ryder and found that they were still under the Department of Corrections supervision. Beyond that, Miss Ryder also mentioned having a parole officer, so we made the arrest under that belief.
Did you seize any physical evidence in the arrest?
Yes, from Miss Ryder's tent, we took a shovel, a hiking staff, a multi-tool, and off of her person, we found a crumpled up napkin in her pocket with some writing on it.
Did you ever find Parker?
Well, we began to search the area. We looked around the trails and the campsites, but we were led to the Lacrone Loop Overlook, where Miss Ryder had been seen the previous day with Parker. Unfortunately, when we arrived there, Miss Page's body was 40 feet below that cliff, and she was unresponsive.
Were you able to conduct an interrogation?
Yes, we were able to do an interview with Miss Ryder.
What do you look for in an interview?
We're looking to find if the suspect has evidence of a motive, a means, or an opportunity.
Did you find any of that during your interrogation?
Well, Miss Ryder and I were actually talking about a health insurance, and I was just trying to see if she had any debt from Parker Page's medical bills. She began talking about a life insurance policy that she had on Miss Page.
No. I want to talk about means. Did you find anything like that?
In the interrogation with Miss Ryder, she had informed me that her daughter was suffering from what is known as osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bones disease, and she was relying on a hiking staff that weekend to get through the trails. Now, we didn't find that hiking staff with Miss Page's body, rather we found it 3 miles down in Miss Ryder's tent.
And what about opportunity?
Well, when we arrived at Calkins, campsite number 12 was pretty off the beaten path. It was separated from a lot of the cabins and other campsites. And beyond that, we only were able to speak to a couple campers that weekend. There weren't many people at Calkins Campground, which means that it was pretty seclusive and people were able to go about and do their business without many people seeing them.
You mentioned the insurance policy brought up on interrogation. Would you recognize that if I showed you here today?
I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel?
You may.
Thank you. No problem. I'll let the record reflect I'm approaching my witness. Exhibit 25. No. Does this appear to be changed or altered in any way?
No, it's the insurance policy increased quote and then the certification on the back.
And then do you believe this to be a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Is at this time the prosecution moves exhibit 25 into evidence?
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, good hearsay.
Response?
Responsible. Your Honor, these are statements given from the party opponent, Jordan Ryder, considering they did in fact submit this policy and in fact lie outside of hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor? Your Honor, the document was created by an insurance company, not Jordan Ryder, therefore this does not meet the exception under Rule 802D.
Okay. Yeah, why, so
Or
I mean,
801D2.
no, yeah, I think it's clear that this document itself was not created by Jordan Ryder. Why would it be party opponent?
So when it goes to 803.6 about regularly conducted business activity, as you see on the certificate on the back,
Okay, so we're not talking about party opponent anymore?
no. Along with 902.11 on certifications, any kind of business conducted activity, it lies outside of hearsay when in fact you have something like this certification.
Response?
Your Honor, simply being able to authenticate the document does not qualify it to meet under all 5 prongs of 803.6. This is an exception for a record of a regularly conducted business activity, and we've heard no foundation that it meets these qualifications.
Right. Yeah, obviously, just the fact that you are asserting it's a business record doesn't make it so. There's, foundation that you need to lay if you're going to try and use 803.6. That foundation hasn't been laid. So your choices are either to respond on different grounds or to try and lay that foundation for 803.6.
I'll try to lay that foundation, Your Honor. Who took out this life insurance policy?
This life insurance policy was of Jordan Ryder on the behalf of Parker Page.
And in fact, when was this taken out?
It began at 10:42 a.m. on July 14th.
Objection, Your Honor. Opposing counsel is just asking the witness to read off the document, and since it hasn't been entered into evidence, this is not laying the foundation necessary. This is simply reading the document onto the record, which is inadmissible hearsay.
Yeah, response.
The response is we were going to show that this was effect on the day in question, the 14th to the 16th, and one of those prongs had something to do with the recommended of the record of activity around the date in question. The date in question being the 14th or the 15th. This admission time start being the 14th believes that it could be admitted.
May I respond on those grounds, Your Honor?
Yeah.
The prong that opposing counsel is referring to is about the proximity of the time from which the document was created,
Right.
not in proximity to the day in question. And all that's happening here is that no foundation is being laid about authentication of the document or whether or not it's kept in regularly practice of business. None of that foundation is being laid. All that's happening is that rather than entering the document, the opposing counsel is simply asking her to read all pertinent information onto the record, backdooring the hearsay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. And I'm front running you here, counselor. I don't suspect the 803.6 foundation is forthcoming. Do you have another basis?
Again, may I retrieve this
You
really
may.
quickly and show it to you? So it's showing the back right here, not 803.6, but 902.11. The regularly conducted activity, here's the sign of proof from Woodlands, therefore creating it as authenticated.
It's authenticated that it is what you represent it to be, but this doesn't cure it of, unless there's a stipulation or case law to the contrary, that doesn't cure it of all hearsay issues. This doesn't just like automatically get rid of it. Or you need to explain to me why this document does that.
All right, you said something about a napkin.
Your Honor, briefly, I'd ask that all testimony about the document be stricken from the record.
Yeah, strictly.
You said that you retrieved a napkin from Jordan Ryder.
Yes, it was a crumpled up napkin in her pocket and it had some writing on it.
Do you know who wrote this?
During the interrogation, I presented Ms. Ryder with this napkin and she confirmed that it was her handwriting.
And would you recognize this document if I were to show it to you today?
I would.
I will reflect on the question of opposing counsel. Reflecting the punch on witness, would you like a courtesy copy?
Sure.
Does this appear to be a fair and accurate copy?
It does.
Does it appear to be changed or altered in any way?
No.
Is that the time the prosecution used Exhibit 26 in evidence?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Admitted.
All right. Now, can you tell me a little bit about what's written on here?
So throughout my investigation, I actually found a lot of parallels to what Ms. Ryder had told me in her interrogation, also within this napkin. Now at the top here, it says $10,000 now and $200,000 is circled. And there's a bunch of other money numbers listed as 50, 100, and 75,000. Now, in the interrogation, when Ms. Ryder and I were talking about insurance, she revealed to me that she had a $10,000 life insurance that was on Parker Page that she changed to $200,000.
There's a list of items over here. What are they?
So there's this little section that says phone, stick, knife, shovel, and then key. We were able to retrieve a stick, a knife, and a shovel from Miss Ryder's tent. However, we found a phone in a different location. It was near a dumpster at a cafe a couple miles down the road in Breckenridge.
And what's over here that's labeled 911?
So there's a list of statements, a few of them are crossed out, and it says, "I'm so sorry this happened, it was all my fault," that is crossed out. I was just so angry, that's crossed out. And I didn't mean to do it, that's crossed out, but then circled is missing. Now, when I first met Miss Ryder at the camp, I asked her where her daughter might be as an officer, and she informed me she believed Parker to be missing.
Objection, Your Honor, to lack of personal knowledge, not on the exact.
What specifically?
Yeah, not on the exact statement of whether or not Jordan Ryder informed the detective of this, but to the conclusions that the detective is making in connection to the statements Jordan Ryder made to her, and extrapolating conclusions based on the statements from the document. Detective Chesney is simply using the statements on the document and extrapolating conclusions on what these could mean without any actual knowledge of what Jordan Ryder was trying to say at the time. So it's more of a speculation objection.
Okay, respond.
Have you heard? This was a parallel drawn by Detective Chesney within her investigation. It's within her rationally based perception that if Jordan Ryder told her that her daughter was missing, and here it says missing and circled, that's a parallel that I believe is well within the range of speculation for Detective Chesney.
Okay, so I mean, obviously lay witnesses are allowed to give opinion testimonies, you know, at least some of the time. Why would that not apply now?
Yes, Your Honor, because Detective Chesney is saying that because Jordan Ryder at one time wrote the word missing on a napkin, she must have been saying that she knew that her daughter had been missing hours before she originally told the police. This is a conclusion that you cannot extrapolate simply because one word was written on a napkin hours before she was ever contacted by the
You can't
police.
extrapolate it because she is, and she explained why. So why would that be an admissibility concern rather than a weight issue?
It's an admissibility concern because this is an unfair conclusion that could unduly prejudice the jury because the detective is simply diving into the mindset of Jordan Ryder at this time, which is inadmissible.
Okay, diving into the mindset of Jordan Ryder, please address that.
She's not diving into the mindset of Jordan Ryder, again, simply giving the parallels from Jordan Ryder telling her that her daughter was missing, and above it saying right here, missing, circled on the napkin.
I think, yeah, I think it's something you can inquire on cross.
Yes.
So tell us about missing one more time.
So yet again, under the title of 911, the only phrase that's circled is the word missing. When I first spoke with Miss Ryder and asked her about the whereabouts of Parker, she informed me she believed her daughter to be missing.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, sir. Detective Chesney, you were originally called to the apartment of Corbin Dallas on July 15th to investigate a potential kidnapping.
Yes, we had been informed by Mr. Dallas that he was the legal custodian of Parker Page. He believed that Parker would be with his biological sister, Miss Ryder.
And you were also aware that, and this was at 8 a.m., right?
Yes, we received the call around that time.
Right, but it wasn't until 9:20 that morning that you decided to use the Find My Phone service to locate Parker Page?
Oh, well, when we arrived there, actually, Mr. Dallas hadn't informed us that he had this, so we were just questioning him, and then after a while, he told us he had the Find My iPhone app, and I informed Mr. Dallas that information like that is imperative in investigations, especially regarding a missing child.
Right, information like that is imperative in investigations, right, Detective Chesney?
Yes.
Right, and you didn't even think to ask about it?
No, because I had not been indicated that he had it. We were going around to other questioning, seeing if he knew about where they might have said they were going, or if they had had any contact with them.
Right, so to ask if they knew where they were going, or if they had contacted you an hour and 20 minutes until you finally decided to wait for Corbin Dallas to then tell you about the software.
Well, we also had to look around the surrounding area to see if they were in the neighborhood. During that hour and a half, we weren't solely just talking with Corbin Dallas. There's a lot of other things that go on. Our troops that were in the field, our patrol officers, were on lookout as well.
Regardless, Detective Chesney, you didn't ask Corbin Dallas if they had this software, did you?
No, yet again, I was unaware of this software that they had. Usually that's something witnesses will come forward with fairly quickly, but no, we weren't.
Well, this led you to Calkins Campground when you decided to use it, right?
Yes, that's where it led
That was
us.
around 10 a.m.,
Yes,
and that's where you spoke to Armando Rodriguez, the campground owner?
yes, he led us to campsite number 12.
Right. At campsite 12, that's where you spoke to Jordan Ryder, right?
Yes,
And when you got to campsite 12, you asked Mr. Ryder a few questions.
I did ask Mr. Ryder a few questions. I
And-
started off by asking if he knew where Parker was.
Right. And after 5 minutes of talking to Jordan Ryder, you decided to arrest him.
Yes, we arrested him under the belief he was in violation of parole. Like I mentioned, he was still under supervision of DOC, and along with that, he had mentioned a parole officer and violations multiple times within the conversation that we had.
Right. You arrested Jordan Ryder for violating his parole. You've never spoken to Jordan Ryder's parole officer.
No, we arrested him under the belief that he was in violation of his parole.
Well,
Yes.
I'm just trying to understand the qualifications you had to arrest Mr. Ryder. You had never spoken to his parole officer.
No, we did not speak with the parole officer.
You didn't know the terms of Mr. Ryder's parole when you arrested him.
No, we just knew that he was under DOC supervision, and that normally means for convicted felons at least a month on lockdown parole. So that's just how it is here in Midlands.
And despite your unfounded belief, Detective Chesney, Mr. Ryder was not actually in violation of his parole that day, was he?
Objection, testifying about the unfounded belief, I simply ask that you just ask the question.
I think that is the question. I'm gonna overrule at this stage, but be careful,
Yes, sir.
with the testifying in your introductory portion.
Despite your belief that wasn't based on ever talking to his parole officer, Jordan Ryder was not actually in violation of his parole when you arrested him, was he?
We weren't able to confirm that just because, yet again, we didn't get the terms of his parole until after.
Detective Chesney, I need a yes or no. Was Jordan Ryder in violation of his parole when you arrested him? Yes or no?
No, but we had the probable cause initially to believe he was.
Right. Now, Detective Chesney, when you arrested Jordan Ryder, you did not collect DNA evidence beforehand.
No, we did not.
You did not collect fingerprint evidence.
No, we usually do that down at the station. That's what we have in the precinct.
Right. You hadn't spoken to any eyewitnesses before you arrested Jordan Ryder.
No, yet again, we didn't arrest Mr. Ryder for anything other than his parole violation.
Right. So while you were arresting Mr. Ryder, you were still investigating a potential kidnapping, weren't you?
Yes, that's why I had my associates arrest Mr. Ryder and go through that process with him while we started to look for Miss Page.
Right. And you did that because time is of the essence when you're conducting an investigation for a missing person, right?
Yes.
Right. And that means that you would have tried to find Parker as quickly as possible, right?
Yes, we were going to try our best. We just needed some information if we could.
Right, you needed some information, but instead of keeping the person around who you knew had been with Parker, you sent Jordan Ryder all the way downtown where he couldn't answer any more questions.
Well, actually, when I first asked Mr. Ryder, he didn't give me any information. He just said that his daughter was missing, so I thought he had no further information to give at that moment.
Right, so you did not keep him around for questioning, you sent him all the way downtown, right?
Yes, we did send him down just to be there. Yes.
After this, you spoke to Kelly Dews, right?
Yes.
And Kelly Dews led you to the left front loop, right?
Yes.
When you got to this spot, you began looking for Parker's body.
Yes. We looked around the surrounding area, just in the wooded areas, and then we traversed down the cliff, which is where we found Parker's body.
From that spot where Kelly Dews took you, it took you over an hour to find Parker's body, didn't it?
It did. We had to look through, like I said, the surrounded wooded area just to make sure she hadn't run off to the sides. So yeah.
Now, Detective Chesney, you're trained in evidentiary collection and procedure, right?
Yes.
Right. So you understand that when collecting evidence, it's important to do it in a timely manner?
Yes.
Right. Well, you didn't finish collecting physical evidence that day. You actually went downtown to interrogate Jordan Ryder, right?
Yes, we actually had to cancel the investigation at one point because the area of the Lacrone Loop was much too difficult to search at night.
Right, so you didn't finish collecting evidence until 7 a.m. the next day, right?
Yes, we had to call off the investigation search for evidence just because of the fact it was dangerous to put my officers in that position.
And this was 19 hours after you found Parker's body that you yourself began collecting physical evidence.
Yes, I went back to the campground to look for more evidence.
But that also means that you interrogated Jordan Ryder without having collected physical evidence.
We had already collected some physical evidence from his tent as well as his person. So, no, we had already collected some pieces
No,
of
I'm
evidence.
asking if you had finished collecting physical evidence when you interrogated Jordan Ryder. You had not finished collecting evidence when you interrogated him, did you?
No, we had not finished collecting evidence yet.
Right now. Lastly, Detective Chesney, you consulted with Dr. Quincy on determining a cause, time, and manner of death, didn't you?
Yes, that's very common here in Midlands. We work very close with the coroner's office. They require evidence from us, and they in turn give us the evidence for the case.
Detective Chesney, you found a hiking staff at Calkins Campground, didn't you?
I did. I retrieved that from Mr. Ryder's tent.
Right. You didn't give that staff to Dr. Quincy the day you found it, on July 15th?
No, yet again, I did not go to the coroner's office that day. The coroner was running the initial autopsy from what I understood. I brought it to them a couple days after. That's just the standard procedure of how that works.
But you were asking, just to be clear, you were asking Dr. Quincy to find a cause and manner of death, right?
Yes, and we supply them with any evidence that we find that could cause injury.
No, Detective Chesney, you were asking Dr. Quincy to find a cause and manner of death, and you didn't give that hiking staff to Dr. Quincy the day after you found it on July 16th?
No, we also had to send it to forensics office. We did a fingerprint scan on it as well. We couldn't find any usable fingerprints. So there were other places that evidence had to go through and other processes. It's just within our standard and our procedure in the department.
Right,
so.
it's your standard procedure. So you didn't give it to Dr. Quincy the 17th, 3 days after you found it?
We gave it to Dr. Quincy at the most available time that we could move the evidence.
Right, that most available time, Detective Chesney, was 5 days after you had found that hiking staff, right? That was on July 19th that you decided to give it to Dr. Quincy?
Yes, sometimes forensic offices take longer. I'm not really sure about the scientific process of it, but that's
But it
when
was
we
5 days?
Yes, it
And
was.
that was 6 days after Parker died?
Yes, that was 6 days after Parker died.
And that was after Dr. Quincy had given you a report concluding that Parker's injuries were consistent with an accident.
Point of order, I just asked that my witness be allowed to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, if you can allow her
Mhm.
to finish it.
Yes, sir.
So, in regards to that question, yes, it was after Dr. Quincy had released their initial report. They informed us that they weren't able to reach that conclusion yet because they were missing pieces of evidence as well.
Right, it was only once Dr. Quincy had concluded that Parker's injuries could have been caused by an accident that you finally decided to give over the evidence of the hiking staff, right?
No, that's not how that worked. We just had to wait until the evidence was available to be transferred by our department, and that's just the timeline we had.
Detective Chesney, was it after Dr. Quincy had released that report saying that Parker's injuries could have been caused by an accident, yes or no, that you gave the hiking staff?
Yes, we had a report that it was either accidental or homicidal, so.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Brief redirect, Your Honor. With the waiting to give the evidence to the coroner, is that standard among all cops?
Yes, we have to make sure that it goes through the process of going to forensics office. We don't do that at the police station just because we don't have the necessary equipment to. So we have to make sure that it's transported reliably.
And there were two possible conclusions the coroner had, correct?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, to leading.
I'll rephrase
Please
the
rephrase.
question. What did the coroner conclude?
In the initial report that Dr. Quincy had given us, they concluded that it could have been an accidental cause or homicidal cause, and that was the report that they had given us.
And did that change?
Yes, the report addendum that Dr. Quincy sent to the station later had a homicidal cause.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
That generator recross?
No, Your Honor.
Ask that my witness be allowed to sit
Yes,
down.
thank you. Prosecution have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Remy Mouchard to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name is Ramaya Mouchard, but Remy's just fine.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I graduated from Midland State University with my degree in astronomy and worked for a couple years at the Midland Center Astronomy Lab. But I'm not sure if you've ever worked in a lab or with many scientists, but it's very boring. So I eventually ditched the lab and I ditched the white coat and I moved out to Breckinridge County, which has the lowest light pollution in basically the entire country. Opened up an astronomy-themed cafe to keep bread on the table, and I've privately continued my research since.
What does owning and operating a cafe entail?
Well, considering that Breckinridge has some of the best stargazing in Midlands, we get quite the crowd coming out to escape the city lights and check them out. And in recent years, we've actually had a very young crowd coming in with an astrology, loving astrology type stuff. So recently we've added daily horoscopes, palm readings, tarot card readings to the menu.
Were you working the weekend of July 14th?
Yeah, I work most weekends at the cafe, but I definitely remember I was working that weekend, 2018.
Did you ever see a Mr. Ryder?
Yes, I did.
Could you point out Mr. Ryder in the courtroom today?
He's sitting over there at the end of the table in the red tie.
Let the record reflect that Remy Mouchard has accurately identified Mr. Ryder. Around what time did Mr. Ryder come into your cafe?
It was around 10:30 a.m. or so.
Could you see what he was doing?
Well, when him and his daughter initially walked in, they tried to sit down by the window, and I didn't recognize them, so I offered them the first-time deal of a free cup of coffee, and I actually handed the girl a cookie, which I saw her slide into her pocket, and that's when they came and sat up at the counter.
Did you talk to them at all?
Not much. They really seemed to be soaking up the free Wi-Fi. They said they were headed over to Calkins Campground and were going to hike the LaCrone Loop, and my shop's the last place on the road that has any kind of Wi-Fi.
Have you yourself ever been onto the LaCrone Loop?
Yeah, actually, Calkins Campground is just down the road. It's also famous for its stargazing. I actually know Armani Rodriguez, the campground owner over there. We kind of have a deal. They get free coffee on the house whenever they want. I can stay at the campground and stargaze. It works out great.
I want to talk briefly about your experience on the LaCrone Loop. How was your experience hiking it?
Well, actually, the LaCrone Loop is famous for stargazing. There's this point at the top of the trail called the Overlook, where there's a break in the trees and the stars are just gorgeous. There's so minimal light pollution. Unfortunately, I've never actually been able to see this for myself, only in photos, because the only time I've tried to hike the trail, it was way too difficult for me to get halfway to the Overlook.
How was this trail difficult?
I mean, it was steep to start with. There was overgrown roots and rocks in the ways. I never got very far.
Going back to July 14th, did you have any more conversation with Mr. Ryder?
No, not really. They mainly seemed to be pretty invested in their phones. Parker was playing a game or something like that, and Jordan was scrolling and then typing and scrolling and then typing.
Around what time did they leave your cafe?
I couldn't say for certain, but they really weren't there for long. Right before Jordan left, though, he stopped and asked if we were open 24/7 in case they needed beignets or Wi-Fi.
Did Jordan ever come back into your cafe?
Yes, but I never saw Parker again.
What do you mean?
Well, it was maybe around 3 a.m. that night, and Jordan came into my cafe and sat right next to the door. He didn't say anything to me, and he had parked in the dark corner of the parking lot right next to the dumpster. I remember because it was a full moon.
Did you know where Parker was?
No, actually, and that's exactly what I asked Jordan, where was Parker? But when I asked Jordan where was Parker, Jordan's eyes got real big and his lips started to quiver, and he said, "Parker, don't worry about Parker, she's..." And then he didn't say anything, so I just went and got him a cup of coffee.
At 3 a.m., could you see what Jordan was doing?
It seemed to be about the same thing that he was doing in the shop earlier. He was scrolling and then typing and then scrolling and then typing. He didn't even break eye contact with me when he asked for the bill.
Did you talk to Jordan anymore?
I'd say even less than I did earlier in the day. He came in and asked for a pen and paper. I only had a napkin, so that's what I gave him. And then he asked for the Wi-Fi, and when I reminded him you have to use something, you have to buy something in order to use the Wi-Fi, he snapped at me and said, "Fine, give me one of those stupid donuts." Mercury must have been in retrograde because I was really taken aback by Jordan's mood, so that's when I went and got him his bill.
What'd you do when you came back with Mr. Ryder's bill?
Well, actually, when I came back with the change for his bill, he was gone. I never even saw him leave.
Why are you here today testifying in court?
Well, the next day when I came into work, I heard that Parker had passed away.
Did you go to the police with anything?
Yeah, actually, about a week after all of this happened, I was cleaning the shop and I found a broken cell phone. It was cracked and it was turned off. And I didn't think it would work, but when I plugged it in, my heart sank. The photo was a picture of Jordan and Parker, and that's when I called the police.
Just to be clear, where exactly did you find that cell phone?
Well, I found it when I was taking out the trash. It was about a week later, and it was underneath the dumpster directly next to where Jordan was parked that night.
Thank you. At this time, I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Yes.
Ms. Bouchard, you're here today because testifying directly helps you profit with your business, isn't that correct?
My business has always been widely successful, so.
But you yourself admitted that the primary reason you're here testifying is for the publicity.
Yes, absolutely, but it's not like we need it or anything. We've always been doing exceptionally well.
But you've been doing TV interviews and such about this case and your involvement in it, haven't you?
There was one, yes.
And the primary reason that you're here testifying today is for that publicity, isn't that correct?
The primary reason that I'm here today is to share exactly what I saw, but I mean, the publicity is definitely a bonus, not that my shop specifically needed it.
Well, let's talk more about what you saw. When you first encountered Jordan and Parker, you thought they seemed happy together.
Yeah, they seemed perfectly content, sitting there on their phones, playing.
Parker was smiling.
Yeah.
Laughing with Jordan.
Mm-hmm. They were smiling, laughing at their phones.
She seemed excited to be going out hiking, didn't she?
Yeah, they did.
In fact, she told you that she was excited to go out on the trail with Mr. Ryder.
Objection, Your Honor, as to hearsay of statements by Parker.
Response?
No statements have been uttered yet. If the witness did not hear any statements, she's free to say so. And if
What was the statement?
Well, this line of questioning calls for hearsay on the statements of Parker, that she in fact was excited and looking forward to hiking with Jordan Ryder.
Wait, so did you ask, did Parker Page make the statements to either Jordan or this witness?
she did, yes, the statements have not been read onto
No,
the record
well,
yet.
no, but I mean, your question said that there was a statement and you're asking her to kind of agree or disagree, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And so you're objecting to that hearsay in the question that's about to be agreed to or disagreed with?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, why would that question of yours not be hearsay?
Well, once the statements are uttered, they will not be being used for the truth of the matter asserted.
Okay, then what for?
They're being used just to show this witness's perception of what Parker and Jordan's relationship was. We aren't interested in the truth of the matter asserted of those statements.
Response?
Your Honor, by Parker stating that they're very excited and looking forward to this trail, that is hearsay because it's the state's contention today that Miss Ryder and Parker had a very good relationship. And these statements by Parker go towards that relationship by saying that she was in fact looking forward to this hiking trip. And because of that, Your Honor, it goes for the truth of the matter asserted and is thus hearsay.
May I briefly respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
In addition to what I said previously under 803.3, it's also Parker's immediate it's also Parker's then existing mental or emotional state, and so it is an exception to hearsay even if it were being used for the truth of the matter asserted.
Response to that?
I have no response, Your Honor.
Okay, well, I'm curious, for 8033, if they're making a statement about a condition that will exist in the future, not contemporaneous with the time that they're making the statement, do you still get the benefit of 8033?
Well, Your Honor, the statement that Parker made to Ms. Mouchard was that she is excited to go hiking with Mr. Ryder, so her then existing emotional state is that she is currently excited for the event that is about to happen. The statement is reference to her emotional state at the time of the statement being made.
May I respond on those grounds, Your Honor?
Sure.
Parker's allowed to say that she's excited, but Your Honor, for Parker to say that she's excited specifically about the hiking trail does go towards the truth of the matter asserted, and the hiking trail itself is not the then existing mental condition. The statements that she was excited are, however, about the hike specifically, is it admissible?
Okay. I mean, I think it's close enough, so I'll overrule. You can go.
Yes, Your Honor. Parker told you that she was excited to go out on the trail with Mr. Ryder.
Yes, the Calkins campground is pretty cool. A lot of our customers are excited to go check them out.
And you thought, after you heard what happened to Parker, that Mr. Ryder could not possibly have hurt her, didn't you?
I can't imagine any parent ever hurting their own child.
But after encountering the two of them and seeing them together, you thought it was impossible that Mr. Ryder could have hurt Parker.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, I just asked that Remy be allowed to step down.
Thank you, ready. Remind.
At this time, the state calls Dr. Quincy to the stand. May I set up the wall to make use of demonstrative?
You may.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.